of a new generation.
This is Kick Radio.
Welcome to Stuck in the Gravel. You're here with Daniel and
Chloe.
Today we'll be discussing pre-season testing and the first Grand Prix of the season.
So on to the day one schedule. McLaren started off with Piastri in the morning. Hamilton was in the morning for Ferrari. For Red Bull, it was Lawson. Mercedes, Antonelli. Aston Martin, Alonso. Alpine was Doohan. Haas was Behrman. Racing Bulls was Tsunoda. Williams was Albon, and Kick Sauber was Hülkenberg. Then in the afternoon, McLaren had Lando Norris, Ferrari had Charles Leclerc, Red Bull had Max Verstappen, Mercedes had George Russell, Aston Martin had Lance Stroll, Alpine had Pierre Gasly, Haas had Esteban Ocon, Racing Bulls had Isaac Hadjar, and Williams had Carlos Sainz, and Kick Sauber had Gabriel Bortoleto. The overall results for day one of testing was Lando Norris being first with a 1:30 in 52 laps. George Russell came second with 0.157 gap, but that was in 70 laps, and Max Verstappen was third with 0.2 behind Lando in 74 laps. So there's not a massive gap between the leaders.
Going on to day two. In the morning we had Oscar Piastri. Ferrari were yet to confirm. They sent out... Red Bull ended up sending out Liam Lawson all day. It was George Russell, Fernando Alonso, Pierre Gasly, Esteban Ocon, Yuki Tsunoda, Carlos Sainz and Nico Hülkenberg. Now for the PM session, it was Lando Norris. Ferrari were yet to confirm again. Obviously, we know Red Bull had Liam Lawson. Mercedes had Andrea Kimi Antonelli, Lance Stroll for Aston Martin. Alpine followed up with Jack Doohan. Haas had Ollie Behrman. Racing Bulls had Isaac Hadjar. Carlos Sainz had the whole day. And Gabriel Bortoleto. And if we look at the final classification, Carlos Sainz topped the session with a 129.348 in 126 laps. Now, bear in mind he had the whole day, so he had probably the most experience, most rubbered into the track. So he got what, pretty much everyone was expecting. Lewis Hamilton closely followed behind with 0.03 of a second in only 45 laps. That's clearly showing that the Ferrari's there. And then Charles Leclerc rounding out the top three, being only 0.08 in 83 laps. The further you look down into the rest of the grid, everyone within the top 7 was within a second. Anything after that was over a second until you get down to, your Haas, which were 3.7 seconds and 5 seconds in around 70 laps.
On to day three, the morning session was Lando Norris. Ferrari were yet to confirm. Verstappen was all day for Red Bull. Kimi Antonelli, Stroll, Doohan, Behrman, Hadjar, Albon and Bortoleto. Then onto the PM session, it was Piastri for McLaren. Ferrari yet to confirm. Verstappen, as I said, all day. George Russell, Alonso, Pierre Gasly, Esteban Ocon, Yuki Tsunoda, Albon, he was also an all day, and Hülkenberg. George Russell topped the timings for day three, a 1:29 in 91 laps. Max followed very closely behind with 0.02 of a second in 81 laps, and Alexander Albon with just over 0.1 of a second in 136 laps. So definitely seeing who some of the competitors are going to be for this year.
Obviously, we realise everyone will be sandbagging. So to be fair, when you look at it retrospectively, it's like, some of the gaps are like completely off. But obviously, when we move into Australia, we'll understand where every car is at. They will push their cars.
Yeah.
Now we're moving on to the news. For transfer activity heading into 2025, Gary Cannon becomes Lance Stroll's new race engineer, his third at Aston Martin. Mike Crack steps down as team principal of Aston Martin and takes on a new role as chief trackside engineer. Former Mercedes HPP managing director Andy Cowell becomes group CEO and team principal. Enrico Cardil leaves Ferrari and becomes Aston Martin's new chief technical officer, and Adrian Newey joins as managing technical partner on March 1st. Laura Muller steps up as Esteban Ocon's race engineer due to an internal reshuffle at Haas, and she is the first female race engineer, so that should, celebration out there, that's going to be pretty nice to see how she gets on within the sport. Getting females in F1 is a brilliant thing. Former team manager Peter Kroller has departed to join Cadillac. The Sauber CEO Mattia Bonotto becomes interim team principal of Kick Sauber, with Jonathan Wheatley set to take over in April. Audi is set to establish a facility in the United Kingdom.
On to car designs and aerodynamics. Mercedes appears to have taken design cues from Red Bull. The side pods now have a vertical inlet, a feature that did appear on the 2022 Zero Pod concept, and a large overbite. Push and pull rod suspension. Ferrari have changed to pull rod suspension. Red Bull have stuck with it, whilst Mercedes have stuck with push rod suspension.
Now, onto the flexi wings. New tests were mandated during the winter break for the rear wings, completely eradicating any chance of another mini DRS system, similar to what McLaren had exploited in 2024. Harsher and stringent tests for the front wing are to be deployed from round 9, the Spanish Grand Prix, following significant lobbying from Red Bull and Ferrari, who claimed Mercedes and McLaren were the main beneficiaries. Ferrari and Red Bull did both use flexi wings in the latter stage of the 2024 season, noticeable in Ferrari's late surge in form. However, Red Bull struggled to find the balance. Round 9 also allows teams to use flexi wings on the front wing for 1/3 of the season. If they have wiggle room in the cost cap, it could be exploited right until they are banned. Not entirely sure why the FIA changed their mind in January about the flexi wings, but there could be some form of political pressure from some teams, and I feel this is something that may need eradicating within the sport of F1. It's like the pressure from teams, the pressure from the press, and everyone's pushing to try and find out whether it's legal or not. I think we should leave the FIA to doing what they're doing. Obviously, there's a bunch of stuff with the president, Mohammed Ben Sulayem, but regardless of that, it should be strict. It should be clamped down on. Leave it to them and stop getting involved, in my opinion. Would you like to move on to the next bit?
Yep. On to chassis diving. McLaren's focus over the winter break was to stop chassis diving and maximise ground effect. This makes the car stiffer on the straights and prevents chassis diving by also making it stiffer in entry to the corners. Hamilton is notably not a fan, with his preference of a looser car in corners, but ground effect gains can be incredibly crucial. Williams believe they are on weight this season. Christian Horner confirmed that the car being tested is the one being used for Melbourne after doubts were raised by the media that it looked exactly the same as last year's car. The same concept has been modified with smaller tweaks and nothing too drastic. The general reliability of the car was good today, even outlasting circuit infrastructure. Red Bull have had the most grip in entry to the corners, but in the morning session was understeering in the mid-corners, allowing for Lawson to have a spin at turn 2. This was eventually fixed mid-afternoon by a setup change for Verstappen. Their long-run pace looked rather solid. Every team was struggling with the dialling the front end of the cars in, but all eventually got there.
Now, onto the track action. Antonelli was attacking turn 10, bringing the car out wide and getting a perfect exit, but did lock up several times. Alonso struggled due to wind and was unable to find the mechanical grip. Isaac Hadjar was extremely aggressive with his steering compared to Yuki Tsunoda, and doesn't quite look as comfortable as the other rookies. Haas focused on long runs again, clocking 160 laps. Behrman was one of the first to complete a race distance in the morning session. The Haas car looked very settled going over the bumps. The Williams are smashing it into the ground more often than others due to ride height. Aston Martin were utilising a lower power mode compared to the McLaren, with even engine clipping heading into some corners.
On to 2026 news. At F175 at the O2, many claimed it was merely a transition year ahead of the 2026 regulations. Teams appeared to be split on how resources are going to be shared between the 2025 project and the 2026 project. The Williams 2026 car has been in the wind tunnel since January 2nd. However, Vowles claimed that they would scrap at every race. It is claimed by Paddock Voices that 2025 could actually be Hamilton's best year at the title in an already established Ferrari car, rather than using 2026 as a transition year. No expectations for Sauber, as 2025 is the last stage of the transition to Audi.
Now, moving on to the drivers changing teams. The I'm not fast anymore Lewis Hamilton has completely disappeared. He appears energised and looks to have bedded in perfectly. This is likely due to Ferrari poaching Jerome D'Ambrosio, Loic Serra and Angela Cullen. Hamilton was initially struggling into turn 11, having an adventure off the circuit, but did proceed to set the fastest final sector on that lap. Carlos Sainz's friend Roberto Merhi was also in the Williams garage, looking at the data and helping Carlos bed himself into the Williams team. Moving on to the rookies.
Not much noise from Doohan, who already looks settled in the new car. Antonelli set the fastest third sector of the morning shift, with the fastest time of the morning, 7th overall. Despite the front locking up in turn 10, looking extremely comfortable and attacked the corners. Behrman was evaluating Haas's long run pace in the morning, looking comfortable and lap times were fairly consistent. Lawson got up to speed in the Red Bull quite quickly, but he does have 11 Grand Prix experience. Small spin at turn 2 due to understeer. Hadjar isn't looking as settled as the rest of the rookies and he looks very close to overdriving the Racing Bulls car with his aggressive steering velocity.
Now, let's move on to the total testing laps completed. For Mercedes, during day 1, 2 and 3, they managed a total of 458, the most of any team. Following is Haas with 457, Racing Bulls with 454, Alpine with 405, Williams with 395, Ferrari with 382, McLaren with 381, Kick Sauber with 354, Aston Martin with 306, and Red Bull Racing with 304. Now, we're going to move on to the breaking news that has come up recently. The Monaco Grand Prix to become a 2-stop race. Drivers are required to use 3 different sets of tyres using at least 2 different compounds, should it be dry. Full wording of the regulation yet to be formally confirmed. Could a driver get caught up on lap 1, pit at the end of the lap, then do their second pit stop on lap 2 and close right up to the pack? Now, for me, this is where the whole mandatory 2-stop race is going to be an issue because, well, typically because you can, if you have a lap 1 incident, we know how small Monaco is. The amount of safety cars, whatever we're going to be expecting, it's more so the fact that you're getting a free pit stop effectively. Yes, you're losing time, but if a safety car's to come out, you're going to catch straight back up no matter what.
Yeah.
And I feel that's where this is going to be a bit of an issue. For me, I get it's a historic GP and stuff like that, but either it goes or the cars have to become smaller. Well,
Yeah.
have you got much thoughts on that?
Not really, I agree with you. I think the problem is when new rules come in is that there'll always be a catch. So I think it's kind of the FIA are going to have to find some form of compromise for either letting teams get away with finding these loopholes or making compromise to much loved Grand Prix like Monaco. So, yeah. So, on to this Grand Prix weekend, which is Australia. First Grand Prix of the season. Quite excited.
Yep.
Yeah. So, practice 1's results have had Lando Norris in the lead, with Sainz, who's gone to Williams as well, second, and Leclerc third. The teams with both drivers in the top 10 are McLaren, Williams and Aston Martin. Williams are looking quite strong for this year, aren't they? McLaren, it's no surprise, but yeah, I think Williams has been a big surprise, but it's a good one. So Aston Martin as well.
That's quite a shock.
Yeah.
Considering how the results went in the preseason testing, they've turned things around, I'd say. I know everyone's sandbagging, and I understand that, but as we've seen with McLaren, they had some sort of pace. Same with Ferrari. Williams was sort of there. There's VCARB that are pushing themselves forward, you know, now. And I feel, yep. Moving on to practice 2, the results were Charles Leclerc topping out the session, Oscar Piastri in second, the home hero, and Lando Norris in third. And the teams that were able to get both drivers in the top 10 were Ferrari, McLaren, and VCARB.
The first thing I'd note about that is McLaren are there again.
Yep.
Both drivers are quite consistent. So that's obviously a promising sign for the rest of the season. Hopefully they'll be able to convert that consistency into a few race wins at least.
Yep.
Ferrari as well, quite a good sign because obviously they've had Hamilton move to join them. So that's a great sign that he's settling in a bit. Also Racing Bulls.
Yep.
Weren't doing too well last season. They weren't horrible, but they weren't great either.
Yeah.
So that's quite a promising sign
Well,
if they can keep it up.
Yep. Well, all I can say from that is consistency is key for every team. It's like they're able to be there, but they're also not shy of pushing themselves. I mean, I understand the 6 rookies that have, I say 6 rookies. Can we count Liam Lawson? That's another talking point. Are we sure we can count Liam Lawson as one? For me, I'd let off people like Ollie Behrman. He's done 3 races. That's fair. Okay, Jack Doohan's done 1, but it's not very fair, is it? I mean, Liam Lawson's done 11. I mean, that's miles. That's like half a season basically. And I feel that he shouldn't be pushed into that category. I get every F1 driver should get the feel of their rookie F1 season, a whole season, but it's more so the fact that they've brought him in twice, and both times it was to replace Daniel Ricciardo. Is that not eyeing up something?
I think it still should be classed as his rookie season because obviously it's his first full season in Formula 1. But I do see your point as well. I think whether he can be classed as a rookie is it depends on where you're looking at it from, because obviously he hasn't had a full season yet of doing the 24 races. But yeah, it's kind of 50-50, isn't it, of is he or is he not?
Yeah.
Because also Ollie Behrman has completed quite a few races for
Ferrari
3,
and
isn't it?
Ferrari
and Haas.
Yeah.
So it depends on what do you class as a little enough amount of races to be a rookie, or too much to be a rookie, or like Doohan as well. He's completed 1 race for Alpine last year. So yeah, because then we've got rookies like Kimi Antonelli, Isaac Hadjar, Gabriel Bortoleto, who haven't completed any races.
They're only just stepping into an F1 car. Well, pre-season, but obviously they've had their showdown runs and stuff like that. But still, they've not even yet had like the feeling of an actual F1 race yet. And this will come this Sunday, and I hope that they do well.
Yeah,
I think they're usually a massive talking point because it's like it's the Australian GP. We're expecting hopefully chaos, but hopefully not. Hoping for a good race and not just a boring race, but
hoping for a bit of racing action.
Yeah,
aren't we? I think the focus is obviously going to be the rookies, especially for the first race, but it's going to be kind of will they break under the pressure, or will they be able to like perform and actually, because it's all great doing testing and practice and pre-season testing and like all of this but it's, I think when they get to an actual Grand Prix and actually having to do the race, sort of their first race, it can all get like very tense and
I know what you mean. I feel like talking about certain drivers as well, I feel like the whole Lewis Hamilton situation, obviously we get it, he's at Ferrari. Fantastic. Just it's all about what he does this season. I think the hype needs to come down a little bit in my personal opinion. I think it shouldn't be as big. I get it's a 7-time world champion at Ferrari. Brilliant. Yeah? But it's all about what he can do on race day. I mean,
Yeah.
Charles Leclerc, for starters, that guy will not let him breathe. He will be... I'm going to say it now. He will be breathing down his shoulder, but at the same time, it's like he's used to that team. Ferrari is Charles Leclerc's team, and it has been since 2019. Well,
Yeah.
2020, should I say, because that's when he took the reins over from Seb. I mean, Seb started to phase out of it, lost it. Charles came in and took over. You know, he was ready. He's, in my eyes, he is Ferrari's main man, and I believe that it should stay that way. Unless Hamilton decides to prove himself to be a lot better than Charles. But until then, it should be Charles' team, and it should be the one that's, you know, I'm not going to say focused on, but like, he should be respected still. I feel like the F1 community doesn't really respect him as much anymore. He's just a shadow at this point, and it's unfair.
I think I agree. I think that Charles, obviously, he deserves so much respect. One, because he's a good driver, but two, because he is Ferrari's like main man. But I think I do understand the hype around Lewis Hamilton, because it's quite a big thing of actually if both drivers perform, can they work together to earn Ferrari a championship this year? And also there's massive talk of, can this be Lewis's, controversially, his 8th title?
Yeah.
It's just, I think there's a lot of talking points around it. A lot of people think he has made the wrong decision and he should have stuck with Mercedes. But then a lot of people are saying this might be a new turnaround for Hamilton and Ferrari. So it could be like a massive thing for both of them, and they could both earn championships and titles. So yeah, but I think...
Yeah, I know what you mean. So there's been plenty of talking points in the F1 paddock, and I'd say specifically with Oscar Piastri, home hero, Australian GP, Melbourne, his home city, yeah, signing that multi-year deal with McLaren to keep going. I mean, that is fantastic to get it announced as soon as possible. He's now on the same contract as Lando, effectively.
Yep.
He's basically getting the same amount of money. Unless, obviously, Lando's money's yet to go up because he was in the championship fight last season. So, are they going to be on equal contracts, or is Lando going to be getting paid more? It depends, because Zach Brown wants to keep 2 first drivers, which is not possible in my eyes. I don't really think a team should be able to do that. I mean, there's either equal or there's a one and a first and second driver, and that's how it should be. But then I also hate the term first and second driver, because it's like you're basically having one driver sacrifice everything for the other driver, and it's like that shouldn't be the case. Everyone's made their way to F1 respectfully. Lance Stroll, otherwise, you know, he's paid his way. He's only got in there because of his dad has him on a team, but still, regardless of that, it's, you know, in my eyes, they should still be respected no matter what. They're out there with like a bunch of adrenaline, racing hard with each other. They're constantly on each other's tails, and there's always rising actions of that. Everything's going to happen. It's the sport of Formula One. But I believe that hopefully that does not happen with McLaren again. I as a McLaren fan, I don't want that. I'm not sure about you, but
I think I don't like the concept of having the first and second driver, because, like you said, it makes one sound better than the other. But also, what happens when the second driver outperforms the first, or proves that they deserve something more than the first? Because we saw it a few times last year with McLaren, and there were some close calls, Hungary being one of them, Lando leading, and then McLaren making the decision to swap them. I think if you start to say that you've got your first driver and your second driver, issues come in. But I think if you don't, then you have the same thing of issues coming in, such as Hungary, what happened there. But I think
we should think about that with racing bulls as well, because they've had Liam Lawson and Yuki Tsunoda sat in the same seat last season, but Liam Lawson got promoted. But we all clearly know who the better driver was, yeah? So they're only saying that Yuki's there because of his Honda contract, which will be ending at the end of this season. So it sounds like Red Bull will be trying to drop him off. Who will pick him up, I don't know, but I believe it'll be someone like Aston Martin. There's been some speculation as well with Andrea Stella and Zach Brown sitting down with George Russell, which, anyone can say what they want, anyone can speculate, but, Oscar's just signed his new contracts that's running out at the same time as Lando's. So are they going to try and get George in? Are they, or is it just friendly conversations to have? The F1 paddock is not a safe place, and we know that. Yeah. It's quite a toxic place.
But not just that, driver's seats aren't a safe place either.
Well,
are they?
exactly.
Yeah, I think this season will definitely be one for a lot of rumours and gossip, especially around the paddock, and especially around drivers coming in, drivers leaving, all that sort of stuff, especially when you've got 6 rookies on the grid, or 5, it depends on if you count Lawson. But I think this season's going to be a good one for both on-track and off-track drama. But, yeah. Anyways, on to race predictions.
Yep. Do you want to go first?
I believe that Lewis Hamilton will get a pole, and I think that the winner of the race will be Lando. I hope that Lewis is going to start off strong and prove that he deserves that seat at Ferrari, and prove that he's going to be like a contender for Drivers' Championship, or that Ferrari are going to prove that they are going to be in the fight for Constructors. Especially from testing and from the practices and stuff. He seems a lot more relaxed at Ferrari. Not saying that he wasn't at Mercedes, but I feel like he's just found a new kind of family and a new oomph to racing again.
Well, to be fair, 2022, 2023, 2024, Hamilton was not comfortable at Mercedes, and you can say that. I think it's pretty clear that he even sounded like in 2023 he had enough. He didn't want to be there.
Yeah.
And he still moved on. He still had the motivation to move on into 2024, hoping to make a difference. And he realised it just wasn't there for him. Now, your predictions, you've gone, I'd say, reasonable with Hamilton and Norris. Obviously, I've gone with pole position being Lando Norris and the race winner being Lando Norris. Originally, I did think that maybe Oscar could snatch the pole, but then if Oscar's on pole, there's no way they would let Lando win. I don't think McLaren would let Lando win. I think they'd try and hold him back as best as possible. But I feel start of the season, they're both going to be ready. They're going to be raring to go. They're going to want to go for it. So I feel like maybe it's all about what happens on track and the on-track overtakes. There should be no, let's do this, let's do that with pit stops and stuff like that. But because no one wants another Hungary 24 issue. That should not happen again. And hopefully McLaren have got that in their brains now. It's been quite a pain.
That's all for this week's Stuck in the Gravel. Thanks for tuning in. I've been Chloe.
And I'm Dan.
on the Kick Radio app and online at kickradio.co.uk. This is Kick Radio.